honorary representatives of the state of Oman and institutions of the country, fellow presenters, Michael, my dear friend, it's an honor for me to be here with you, and I thank you and the organizers for inviting me to this important conference. As has been said already today, my presentation will be focusing on contemporary visions of modern payment systems, and I will also touch on the angle of the impact on economic development. Okay, I will start with a simple statement that we all know that electronic payments are modern and efficient ways of transacting, and basically are synonymous with convenience. They allow us to transact faster and in more secure ways. However, one thing that many people don't really appreciate is the impact of adopting a modern payment system on economic development, policy, and stability. And that adoption of modern payment systems provides opportunities to capture trillions of dollars being traded out there. Essentially, a contemporary vision of a modern system is one which embraces, among other things, the need to continuously upgrade and modernize the architecture. We heard that yesterday in several presentations, including a modern legal framework, institutional framework, rules and regulations, which we term the ecosystem. It also takes into consideration the revolving needs of users and stakeholders, new and modern instruments, such as e-commerce, online banking, mobile banking, which again we've heard a lot yesterday. A modern payment system, in my view, is also synonymous with technological innovation, because it's really through technology that we are able to bring in new types of systems. We talked about security yesterday, and absolutely, we heard how far companies are going to ensure that in modernizing payment systems, we do not compromise the security aspect. One other important component is, one important aspect is also the need to be aware of what's going on around us. As we know, the world is an ever-evolving place, and a modern payment system is one which really looks around and adapts to what is happening elsewhere. I took an example here by Payment Canada, using the case of Canada as an illustration of what a contemporary vision of a payment system would look like. So for Payment Canada, the core principles that they use is that the modern payment system has to be fast, flexible, and secure. Like I said, one that promotes innovation and strengthens competition. It recognizes that, like I said, the world is changing, and so are payment system around it. And there's a need to move fast and embrace technological change. As I said, any system needs to be competitive always. And as the world is moving to faster payment systems, yesterday we heard from Mr. Godfrey how much different types of terminology we can see in terms of what we can describe as payment system, and faster payment system is something that is a basis for such a modern system. We also heard yesterday a lot about frameworks and standards. We heard about COVID, and again, the case of Payment Canada, they recognize the need to keep up with standards. And what defines fundamentally Canada's modern payment system is one that is fast, efficient, convenient, and interoperable. I copied and pasted this couple of small diagrams that really goes in deeper into these core principles that I've said yesterday: fast payment options, data-rich payments, transaction transparency. You have the presentation, so I will not go into all the minor details there. But essentially, this one here really captures the essence of what I've been talking about, that a modern payment system has to be fast, efficient, easy, convenient, and interoperable. Fast transactions are processed in near real time, some cases real time now. It has to be efficient, Posting to accounts, for instance, occurs quickly, making funds available sooner, in some cases immediately. It has to be easy. Transferring funds is made easier through use of common identifiers, like an email address. Convenience. Each transaction provides status notification and standardized payment information. And interoperable. Domestic and cross-border commerce is seamless due to standardized protocols. Like I mentioned earlier, the other dimension of my presentation is the impact on economic development. And very often we forget how critical payment systems play in terms of boosting economic growth, economic activity, because we tend sometimes to focus payment system as something on its own, in isolation. But I've used a couple of studies here to illustrate how critical modernization of a payment system can impact economies. And as I conclude here, numerous studies and analysis are unanimous in their findings that modern payment systems have major positive impact on economic development. There are risks. There are, at times, as I was discussing with a colleague yesterday, I'll come back to that, but there are times if the framework, the structure is not there, imposing a modern system can also have negative impact on economies. For instance, in less developed world, where we're trying to push for more modern payments, as was said yesterday, the economies, the countries may not be ready to adopt that. And by pushing too far, too soon, we actually may impact negatively, especially on financial inclusion. But essentially, higher card usage can add billions of dollars annually in international consumption to the world economy, and I'll give you some figures shortly. Modern payment systems also provide huge opportunities to business operators. The global market opportunities are huge, in that today a significant amount of transactions that are being done in informal, outside a normal system, are not being captured, and the potential to bring this in the formal economy is massive. As a former policymaker, as a former central banker and an economist, this is very important to me, the next point. Modernizing the payment system have a positive impact also on monetary policy and financial stability, and I'll discuss this very quickly. And as I said before, it also promotes financial inclusion because it embraces technological change. But at the same time, as I said, if a country is not really ready, by pushing too far too soon, we can actually have a negative impact on that. And something that is dear to the World Bank, because the World Bank, which is my institution, our core objective is to help reduce poverty in the world. And we've seen in some countries, for instance, Kenya with M-Pesa, how much using technology and the modern payment system can actually access the poorest people in the most remote villages and change their lives and their activities in a significant way. Okay, I have here a study by Moody's on the impact of electronic payments on economic growth. And this study looked at 56 countries over a period of 5 years, from 2008 to 2012. And it concluded that growth in use of electronic payments, products like credit and debit cards, added over that period $983 billion to GDP of the 56 countries that were covered in the study. Card penetration provided an important boost to economies. You would recall in 2008, the world went through a major financial crisis. And card penetration, the conclusion is card penetration provided an important boost to economies, helping to mitigate what would have otherwise been an even slower recovery from the global recession. The study concluded that card usage in the US, for instance, increased consumption by 0.3%. We may think of 0.3% as being small, but in absolute terms, it added $127 billion to the US economy over that period. And in terms of the global economy, in some countries, card usage increased For instance, in China, it increased by 4.9%, in Chile by 1.2%, and in Brazil, 1.15%. And the important thing is in these emerging markets, card usage added 0.8% compared to 0.3% for developed markets. Emerging markets have seen the greatest increase in GDP due to high growth of penetration. Example in China, where card usage increased from 31% in 2008 to 56%, and the impact was a 1.7% increase in GDP over that period. The study also looked at future economic benefits and concluded that a 1% increase in card usage across these 56 countries are expected to produce a 0.056% increase in consumption. And given recent card penetration, growth rates, and additive effects calculated in future GDP is estimated at a meaningful 0.25%, adding to the global consumption by about 0.16% in additional GDP. Here is just a short table that I copied and pasted. I don't know if it comes out very clear, but as it shows, over that period I was talking about, the US GDP consumption increased by $127 million. In the case of China, it increased by $375 billion. And there's a whole list of other countries there. Okay, I talked earlier about the impact on payment system on monetary policy. Why monetary policy is important? Because development cannot take place without a stable macroeconomic environment, and one core element of a stable macroeconomic environment is a well-functioning monetary policy. And effective monetary policy requires an efficient transition mechanism. And an efficient monetary transmission mechanism relies on the smooth functioning of payment infrastructures, enabling transactions of these institutions with the central bank, as well as amongst themselves at the interbank market. And I'm glad to know that the Vice President of the Central Bank is here with us today. So if operation of a payment system is underdeveloped, financial institutions tend to keep a relatively large buffer of central bank money to help manage their liquidity. And this can lead to weaker than intended monetary policy impulses from central bank. After the payment system in the economy has reached a certain threshold, influence of the payment system on monetary policy becomes more important, because an increase in the efficiency of payment systems increases the velocity of money circulation. And an increase in the efficiency of payment system results in an increase in the use of accounts relative to use of banknotes and coins. Less time is required for each piece of money or securities to lie unused in an account between two successive payments. This leads to a shorter time period between inflow and outflow, and as a result, to a higher velocity of money in circulation. In sum, payment systems are an essential precondition for the implementation of operational monetary policy, and their degree of sophistication has a direct impact on the velocity of money in circulation, thereby influencing monetary policy itself. Another important aspect of the macro environment is financial stability. And here it has been shown that there is a strong link between efficient payment systems and financial stability. A commercial bank, for instance, can be the source of financial instability if it faces technical difficulties or it fails to repay funding. Payment systems can prevent such occurrences and are a mechanism for central bank to prevent potential contagion. A financial stability crisis can start when a financial institution is unable to repay funding to the lender at the repayment date, which the lender needs the liquidity at that repayment date. Fear of such occurrences happening simultaneously was an important element, actually, in the proliferation of the US subprime market prior to the global recession. And central banks, recognizing the impediments to markets functioning and the threat of existence of solvent economic actors, utilize payment systems to grant liquidity, not only to the market as a whole, but to individual institutions as well. And commercial banks transferring among them funds held in accounts with central banks have facilitated the proper functioning of the banking and financial system and mitigated disruptions and instability globally. So settling payments in an account at the central bank still provides a link with the two main tasks of monetary policy and financial stability. So to sum up, a modern payment system have a determined impact on monetary policy and a positive influence on financial stability in the system as a whole. Earlier, I talked about opportunities. We've looked at how much a modern payment system impacts already, but looking forward, what are the opportunities? And here I took one study from the World Bank, which basically showed that developing and accelerating acceptance of electronic payments by merchants is essential to expanding financial access. So essentially, I will not go through all this slide, but the conclusion out there is that today, in 2015, for instance, small and medium enterprises are transacting around $34 trillion in supplier payments, wages and salaries, etc. And of this 34 trillion, only 15 trillion were made electronically, which means that the remaining 19 trillion provides an opportunity, if this can be captured by the modern payment system. It could bring in about $19 trillion into the formal economy. Just before I end, I wanted to also add a slide, but in the end I just couldn't do it. Essentially, for the World Bank, as I said, our role in the developing world is critical, and today we do a lot of work in promoting financial inclusion in Africa, in Latin America, in less developed countries, and it's become very obvious to us that combining technology with a modern payment system can have a major positive impact also on reducing poverty. For instance, where I'm working in West Africa, we're developing mobile payments to access farmers in remote areas where otherwise they would not have the ability not only to use technology to access information like weather patterns, markets, but also to have an ability to transact at the most remote level in the countries, and there are many examples. Agriculture is just one. So just to conclude, it's very clear that modern payment systems have a major impact on modern economies, but also on less developed economies. But as I said earlier, it is important that in helping countries move to more financial inclusion, that we first work on putting the framework and systems in place, because the risk is that eventually if we push too far, we may actually handicap those that we want to reach out because they are not ready to embrace that change. So with this, I will end my presentation, and once again, thank you for listening, and thank you for having me here.
إذا نفتح الآن باب النقاش لأي من لديه استفسار أو سؤال حول ورقة العمل.
Sorry, if you have any questions, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to stay, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so today what we are facing with the payment systems is lots of scammers are using the payment systems, especially the digital payment systems, and trying to scam the customers and get details and do lots of fraud cases. How do you think that with this scamming and these issues that we are facing today, we're going to improve our payment systems?
I think the important thing is to look at it from a global perspective. Like I said, if we are looking at payment system in isolation, I believe, like we've seen yesterday, there's no turning back. The world will continue to modernize. The systems itself will continue to innovate. But the critical thing is to what extent economic growth drives a better payment system, or payment system supports economic growth. So I believe it works both ways, but the way I see it, it's more that the payment system itself will innovate. Okay, it will embrace technological change. It will embrace new ways of doing things, and in doing so, this is what will push economic growth further, in my view.
Yeah, my name is Mahmoud Al-Sawai from National Bank of Oman. Good morning.
Morning.
I guess only you mentioned about migrating the people to use the payment system. Actually, I'm linking my question to the gentleman who's just only start with the user. I want to guess on if you have any statistic of migrating those people who's using the new technology of payment, like wallet or mobile banking. Any statistic that you have go through or it's come out of result of the payment system in your area? That is exactly the...
No, unfortunately I don't, but I can share that with you later. Because in my area where we're doing, a lot of them are new. I mean, I believe in Kenya, for instance, there should be a good database, a good track record of how much these have impacted, and I don't have it with me now. But where I am now, these are new initiatives that we are only promoting at this stage. But let's keep in touch, and I'll be happy to share information with you.
That's what we need exactly, to study the others market, to understand what the trends of, like Africa, when they migrate such payment.
Yeah,
that would be very useful for us also to just only measure ourselves going forward.
Let's share that. I mean, the challenge in Africa, to be very honest, is actually statistics. And one of the things that the World Bank is trying to do is to build statistical capacity in the region. And but let's keep in touch. We'll exchange cards later.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Nasser. I want to ask how to can improve the session of the transaction that made the mobile application or the website of any company, because many customers complain about the session time out from the bank, from bank side or from the application itself. How the system is or the technology is improving this stage?
Okay, I'm not very well placed to answer that kind of detail. I mean, we have other colleagues who are more the financial, technical guys here. But no, but I believe
because still there is a customers, there is a technology, but still the customer, they don't want to use it because they're afraid of this time out, the amount get debit from their finance account or something.
Okay, to me this becomes an issue of sensitization also, because one of the problems we've seen is the client as a whole, even some countries, being scared to embrace this kind of new things. I mean, you've seen, again, I mentioned M-Pesa in Kenya, where they've embraced it and it's changed the country fundamentally. But I believe it's up to the providers of the service to sensitize and convince their clients of what they're trying to do. But I believe also that this is a role for the policy people who, in terms of promoting financial inclusion, have to go out and convince the market out there that this is something that will bring the benefits. I mean, as policymakers, our role is first to put in place the frameworks, the regulatory frameworks, the enabling environment for this to happen. And this is where now the companies will come in and provide the product. But we should be able, as a group, to convince people and sensitize them and show them this is a benefit that will come to you. But as you say, if at the end of the day the track record is not there, this is when it becomes an issue of a competitive environment. Whoever does it better will have a bigger share of the market, and whoever does it better will be able to bring even more to the users in the end.
Okay.
Excuse me. Is this working? I just want to add, it's unfortunate that in a particular process with these applications, there's few elements interferes. Some it's to do with the application and the setup of the application, not necessarily from the central system perspective, but also from the independent bank applications or the payment service provider applications. But also there is, beyond that, is the telecommunication infrastructure in such a country that plays also a direct role into this, the speed there's a certain concerns. Sometimes you come to balance between the security, the information security requirement in such an application, and again, the intention behind such a payment channel. Depending on this, you do your effort to provide the real balance for such a channel, and then you rely as a banking community or as a payment service providers on the telecommunication infrastructure to support this. It's not necessarily related to a particular application. It could be also a general issue. It's not necessarily with the telecommunication infrastructure, but it could be applying the wrong or unnecessarily additional layers within such an application that might slow such a transaction process. But be assured, at least as far as Oman is concerned, there is always monitoring from this perspective. The good thing also that the competition is also playing a role in terms of the efficiency of handling these payments via, in particular, the mobile channels. Thank you.
This is a very important point. This is why the World Bank, the way we intervene in countries where we in this aspect, we first assist with the infrastructure, the backbone, the fiber optic cables, etc. And earlier I talked about the regulatory environment, because we don't just give a country, $50 million to invest in fiber optics, but part of our support is always that capacity building and the regulatory reforms that are needed in those countries, because it's through adequate regulation that you will ensure that the infrastructure is in place, but also the rules and the service providers are playing by the rules and providing the quality of the service that is expected as part of the whole ecosystem.
Considering the market situation and the challenges, what are the challenges expected in terms of system development, automation? Will this impact or slow down the development? If so, what will be the challenges?
I believe it can only impact positively on development, as I said, provided we are realistic about it and we address the risks that come with it. I mean, the challenges we've seen yesterday in the various presentations, not just challenges but also opportunities. And I believe the challenges will be, as the world competes to go into various systems, which are the ones that we will, the world will embrace and the clients will embrace. Yesterday, for instance, we saw different types of money, different types of e-currency. So to me, the challenge will be more on the service providers and those who are innovating, and what they can do to get the users to accept whichever systems we are pushing. But what is clear is, like Professor Godfrey said yesterday, there is no turning back. I mean, the world is moving forward, and as technology becomes more advanced, the challenge will be, how we embrace, as I said earlier, this technological change, and who will become more competitive and who will get eventually the end user to better accept what you're throwing out there, because there'll be different products, there'll be different as it is today. It's a very competitive world out there, and I'm sure Michael will tell you that. But the challenge will be for those trying to push forward, how they can embrace competition and embrace technological change to really bring to the forth the next frontier of payment systems. Okay, so I guess with that, I will thank you for listening, and thank you for your questions. And again, thank you, Mike and team.